Hey, this is Stephen Seifert. Welcome to another edition of Dulcimer Diary. This one's going to be a little different. I've got a bunch of thoughts in my head, and I want to get them out. And I want you to watch a little video with me. This is a video of John Rice Irwin, and he's talking about dulcimers. I saw this video a long time ago, and I lost track of it. And here it is again. So I kind of want to listen a little bit, talk a little bit. I really want to know what y'all think. And John Rice Irwin, who's that? Well, he started the Museum of Appalachia in Norris, Tennessee. They have a bunch of dulcimers, thanks to him. He's done a lot of really cool stuff. Not just for Tennessee, but, for the world, if you look at it that way. So in one sense, I'm indebted to this man. I think we all are. But I want to listen to what he has to say about Dulcimer. I will tell you, he was born 1930. He died in 2022. He did get a bachelor's degree at Lincoln Memorial University with majors in history and economics. He then went to University of Tennessee and got a master's degree in international law. He went on to be a superintendent of schools in Anderson County, Tennessee. And you really ought to check him out. And a lot of you have seen a book he's responsible for that lists a lot of instruments of Appalachia. But let's just deal with this video and what he's talking about. So I'm going to hit play. Let's see what we've got here.
The dulcimer, as far as musical instruments in southern Appalachia and in probably all of the eastern part of the United States, is in a category, I think, by itself. It's an instrument that was played by itself. It had a low sound, and I just never heard, except on very rare occasion, the dulcimer was never played with other instruments.
So, all right, let's start with that. The dulcimer, I think he used the word lull. Lull. I looked this up. It's a verb. It's a noun. I don't know if that's the word he said, but calm, send to sleep, soothing, typically, kind of quiet. So, yeah. And I guess he's saying he doesn't really know of many instances where it was used with other instruments. I think that's true a lot of the time. I think it tended to be a home instrument. Banjoist George Gibson from Kentucky, he has some ideas about home instruments, or a lot of the things we do at home, they don't end up making it into popular history, a whole lot of things that go on with music at home. A lot of that stuff might kind of stay at home in a lot of cases. So it's kind of hard to know. But this idea that dulcimers haven't really been playing with other instruments, and he says, there are exceptions. I can imagine that they were played with other instruments more than we realize. One of those other instruments is voice, singing with the dulcimer. And I think of the Galax, Virginia area, where I do think there were dulcimers played with other instruments. But in Ireland, they talk about in the old days, you probably often had just one musician. You had your fiddler or your piper. You didn't end up with, 75 people playing music together, or maybe not even 5 in some instances. In the old days, maybe there was a lot of just single instruments going on. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think about some of that.
It was never played with other instruments, number one. Number two, I guess the proper name may be the mountain dulcimer, because there were other instruments called dulcimers going back to biblical times.
Let's talk about that. The other instruments named dulcimer, hammered dulcimer. I think that's what we're talking about here primarily. I don't think the name dulcimer goes back to biblical times. There were hammer dulcimer type instruments going way back. I know that all over the world. But right here, he's talking about the name. It wasn't called a dulcimer, and back in Old Testament times. When the King James guys, and I don't know the whole history of this, but when the King James translation was happening, they just needed some generic names to refer to these instruments. So let's quit telling people that the word dulcimer goes back to biblical times, or that the hammer dulcimer existed in biblical times. It may have been a very different thing, and but the name, did Jesus know the word dulcimer? I don't know. Did David of the Bible, was he familiar with the actual word dulcimer? I doubt it. But if you got any knowledge on that, I will humble myself and listen.
And but it was not used much even in southern Appalachia. If you take 5 counties near us, Anderson County, Roane County, Morgan County, and 10 counties, in all of the collecting, I've never found a single one in this general area from here south toward Chattanooga. Now, in southwest Virginia, you found quite a few, in fact, more there than most anywhere, and in eastern Kentucky and in western North Carolina. So most of the people in this region 50 years ago, or when I was growing up, you could go up and down the road asking for a dulcimer or doing research on, you could go to 50 houses and nobody would have even heard of one.
Well, they called them by different names, right? I've been doing so much research on dulcimer-like instruments all over the earth going back centuries. I know that the definition here is, of a fretted zither. You can look up the academic definition. I know that matters. We need to use that kind of stuff. But from the musician's standpoint, get some strings going across the box. Put some notes on there. Use simple tools. Make a simple instrument. Play simple music on it. I don't care what you call it. Instruments in the neighborhood of the mountain dulcimer that we play, we know they were around in the 1500s in the Germanic areas. There's all the European ancestors. There's Asian versions, So it's like he's saying these instruments haven't turned up. Like some people have never even heard of one. I don't know. It seems like, is he talking like a professional historian here? Now, this is an older video, now with newspaper searches and how easy we can look into data online. We've got the advantage of artificial intelligence that can help us do searches. We've probably got more access to information than he did, but he's hanging a lot on the name. Like, I don't care what you call it. I think what he's saying is its existence has been greatly exaggerated. I heard him say that in some other video one time. How do you know that? I don't know. It's rubbing me the wrong way.
I mean, it was a strange word. And the question of how it became introduced is still up for some speculation, but it was a late instrument.
All right. I think when he says late instrument, he's kind of comparing it to others. And I'm making up some of this in my mind because, we can't ask him. This is a little unfair to him. But how late an instrument is it? Praetorius, mentioned this instrument in the 1500s, I think. I could have my date wrong, but it's close. And even had an illustration, I don't like this thing where we've really narrowed, the American dulcimer, it's a it's an important thing in a bigger picture. And if you're going to talk about our instrument, I almost feel like he's saying these aren't real. Like this is a little bit fictional. Like we've all told ourselves a story. We're going along with it. No, no, no. I've been spending so much time on foreign websites in different languages using Google Translate. There's a lot of instruments pretty darn close to the dulcimer. So think about the melting pot this country is. The I just feel like something's off here. Can you help me figure it out? You're welcome to point out that it's me a little bit. I get that, but yeah, let's hear some more.
In our area, probably almost none turned up before the Civil War. The person that popularized the dulcimer more than anyone else, I think, was a lady by the name of Jean Ritchie, and she lived in eastern Kentucky, a place called Viper, not too far from Hazard, I guess. She was one of 14 or 15 children, and why did she pick up the dulcimer, and where did she hear about it? There was an old lady up the hollow from her by the name of Hall, and they had a dulcimer, and some person in that community had made it, and I think that's where Jean first heard it, and then she started playing. It was a terribly isolated place.
Well, he doesn't mention her dad playing. He doesn't mention Uncle Ed Thomas. He doesn't mention Heinemann Settlement School. I don't know. He's trying to paint a picture like it's not that common of an instrument. He says there wasn't even, you can hardly find any from before the Civil War. Well, we're finding more and more. And again, what about all the instruments that are pretty darn similar to it all over Europe in the centuries that predated the Civil War here in America?
And then she went to New York and started recording, and I think if it had not been for Jean Ritchie, nobody would have known about the dulcimer.
Well, that's fair to some extent, but nobody. If it hadn't been for her, nobody would have heard of it. Forget what it's called. It's a kind of instrument. It's pretty basic. Humans everywhere could be inventing these and forgetting them over and over again through the centuries. I certainly give Jean Ritchie props for. Of course, she spread. She was the one of our best Johnny Appleseeds, if not the best. But hey guys, I've never done a video like this where I'm critical hardly of anything or anyone. Maybe I do need you to help me understand this a little better. To be fair, right?
So it was very sporadic in its distribution, and not one, as I say, in certain spots you would find them.
In your collection, they're all different shapes and different.
He's asking him there in your collection, are they all different shapes and types?
There's two Smith, a gentleman by the name of Smith, and they've written books on them, and they can look, and I can to a certain extent, at a dulcimer and tell where it was made by the shape and the configuration and all. In lower, this is an exception to what I was saying a while ago about where you found them. In lower Middle Tennessee, they had a rectangular instrument that they called a dulcimer, and some people referred to them as scantlings. But
yeah, that's what we call Tennessee music box. A lot of us. But he's saying that this is an exception to what he was saying earlier. I think there's a lot more exceptions. I guess that's my point in this video here.
Referred to them as scantlings, but every one of those that I've ever seen came from Giles County and Pulaski and South. But the question as to who introduced them and exactly when.
It's so Sandy Knatzer and David Schnaufer did a bunch of research. Sandy published an article in the Tennessee Folklore Journal that was under Middle Tennessee State University and Dr. Charles K. Wolf. It's a great article. And Sandy cataloged a lot. And there's been more found. A lot. And there's a beautiful story in that. You know, it's almost like he's trying to say, I don't know where all these started and how they ended up. You know, he doesn't quite say it, and I know I'm putting words in his mouth. That's not fair, but you guys, who came up with shoes? Is there one place? Is there one place that came up with a spoon? How about a drum? Who's the one group that came up with the idea of a drum? I think there's certain things that are so basic to humanity. You know, no doubt people came up with a drum in a lot of places over the centuries, maybe going back thousands of years, beating something with a tightened skin head over it. I don't know. Do we care what it's called? I mean, we care, but I don't know. What's bothering me? Can you help me understand this?
Is pretty much a mystery, I think.
Let's hear that again. Let's hear that
Introduce them
again.
and exactly when is pretty much a mystery, I think.
I think that's
But
right
it
to
was
an
a late
extent.
instrument, and it was not widespread.
It was a late instrument, and it was not widespread. No, that's not true. Now, look, I'm a Dulcimer fanatic. I love them. You know, this is like when somebody talks bad about your mama, you know, or you just bought a Chevy and somebody tells you should have got a Ford. You know, it gets you crazy a little bit. I know that's going on here, but a late instrument, not widespread, except it shows up all over the earth. And I know some people are going to say, look, he's talking about, you know, the Appalachian Dulcimer, more or less. I don't know why we're limiting it to that. I mean, the American styled fretted zithers. Man, I love America. And I love what we've done with the zither. And we're going to keep doing things to it. It's funny to me how some people just take one little piece at time, you know, and it's like ignoring everything before it and mad at everything after it. The process of humanity and the desire for music, you know, it's, and traditional doesn't mean you just blindly copy the past. It's a blending of old and new. It's a beautiful story. Am I taking this too personally? Man, maybe some of you are a psychologist. You could help me break this down a little bit, but I feel like he's kind of down on Dulcimer a little bit. And yet, I've enjoyed his museum. What great things this man has done. I don't want to make it sound like, you know, I don't know. There is something wrong with me. I think he's taken something he knows a little bit about, and he's talking about it as if he kind of knows almost everything. I'm glad that he admits it's a mystery. This other video, I think, I could be making this up, but I think he said somewhere else, its influence has been greatly exaggerated or something like that. Something was greatly exaggerated. And if he didn't say it, that's kind of, I guess, what I'm thinking in my head he's saying. The Dulcimer cannot be stopped. Fretted zithers. You've got the French epinette. You've got the Hummel. You got the Scheitholt. And I'm familiar with some of the weird histories in these names. You know, Ralph Lee Smith says the word Scheitholt doesn't show up much. That word, other than, you know, in that work by Pretorius. I have looked online using I'm on websites of different languages, and I looked for all these variants on the spelling of Scheidholt, and I found a lot more references to it going back a long way. I found a nice one recently in London in the early 1800s. I mean, the variants on the spelling of Dulcimer, Dulcimore, Dulcimer, Dulcerine, fence scorpion, says Jerry Milnes, in his one of his books. I've heard them called duck slammers, Tennessee music box. What are my favorite parts of the dulcimer? You've got a drone. You have kind of a melody string where just the notes you need are there. Whether you've got a sound box that goes the full length of the fingerboard, I'm not real worried about. But yes, that's part of it. Some frets are right on the body. American instruments have the raised fingerboard. But look, check out L. Allen Smith's catalog of pre-revival dulcimers. You can get a copy for yourself anywhere from $100 to $200 online. And they're getting more rare. Go to JSTOR and see if you can find the dissertation that L. Allen Smith did years before the book came out. He spent over a year on the road, and this dissertation's over 800 pages long. I have a copy. It's astounding. There's a lot more detail in there. Ralph Lee Smith, he's done a couple books. I've got one here, The Story of the Dulcimer, second edition, the Charles K. Wolfe Music Series. So it was republished, even though Ralph Lee Smith came out with a more recent book, and I've got that one. And there was a couple different editions of that, I think. Newspaper searches. How about this, you guys? Let's not be too down on Dulcimer. There's going to be some amazing discoveries coming out of things, like the fact that increasingly we are having handwritten letters in all languages all over the world scanned, and artificial intelligence will help us look for common phrases and alternate spellings on those phrases. I've looked in different languages, Hungary, Germany, Holland. I've looked through old documents looking for the equivalent of the words three strings, and along with the music or something. I've come up with so much stuff, I can't believe it. So it's unfair to pick on this man because he's passed on and he can't really answer. And he might sit me down and say, look, close your mouth and listen, but I'm hoping, can you help me with this? And I'll provide a link to this original video. Yeah, I don't think it's a recent thing. And I don't think it's been a big exaggeration. I don't think it's a fiction. I'm proud of it. I'm proud that it's an American thing, but I'm even more proud that it's a human thing from all over the world. And we each get to carry a little part of it. And again, I keep trying to be fair. If this man could sit down with us and look over what we've found, even in the last 15 years, he might go, well, hats off to y'all, Please give me your thoughts. I always ask you that, but I think this needs a little more than usual. I'm going to let just the very last part of this play again, and then we'll get out of here. Let's see, where was he? All right, let's go here.
Who introduced them and exactly when is pretty much a mystery, I think. But it was a late instrument, and it was not widespread.
There you go. All right, you guys have a good one. I'll see you later.